Instantly claiming the center and opening lines for the queen and bishop immediately presents dynamic possibilities. Preparing a solid pawn chain, this gambit subtly challenges white's central ambitions by aiming for a flexible, robust structure. Asserting central dominion, this boldly stakes a claim for the d-file and open lines. Immediately challenging, the center creates a dynamic struggle for crucial central squares. Exchanging pawns immediately opens the center, creating dynamic possibilities for both sides. Reclaiming the pawn with the king's pawn reestablishes central control and aims to develop pieces actively, mirroring white's early pawn push. Challenging the center's structure immediately, aiming to exploit open lines and potentially gain a queenside pawn majority. Developing a knight to a central square, now aims to challenge white's pawn structure and prepare for kingside castling. Solidifying the center with a knight, preparing pawn advances and controlling key squares. Developing the knight to its natural square fortifies the center and prepares for queenside expansion, embodying sound positional principles. Pinning the knight offers a chance to disrupt black's pawn structure and gain an outpost on d5. Sacrificing the pawn opens fascinating tactical possibilities, inviting piece development and a sharp fight for central control. Emboldened, white seizes central territory, creating a pawn chain poised to disrupt black's development. Centralizing the knight offers excellent defensive and offensive potential, eyeing the weak d3 pawn and preparing for further development. A bold queen sortie, aiming to disrupt black's central pawn structure and exploit the pinned knight. Unleashing a bold knight fork, black immediately targets white's vital queen and king coordination, forcing concessions and disrupting central pawn control. Sacrificing the bishop to unravel black's pawn structure and open lines toward their king is a bold counterstroke. Securing the open c-file, black now aims to leverage the exposed king and coordinate pieces for a decisive assault. Developing the knight to f3 now aims to castle quickly, securing the king amidst this open position. Fortifying the kingside opens up dark squares, but risks creating weaknesses around your monarch. Sacrificing the bishop opens a dangerous diagonal towards black's weakened kingside. Opening the f-file exposes your king to a dangerous diagonal attack and surrenders valuable central control. Securing the king with castling is paramount before venturing further. The king's safety now transitions from immediate concern to a background consideration. An audacious attempt to seize initiative by challenging the queen and potentially exploiting the weakened kingside pawn structure. Unleashing a powerful rook attack, white seizes the open file and directly targets black's vulnerable king position. Abandoning castling now leaves the monarch precariously exposed to that relentless diagonal. Unleashing a queen's direct gaze towards the exposed black monarch, this maneuver immediately heightens the pressure on an already precarious kingside. Unleashing a kingside pawn storm opens new avenues, but also exposes your monarch to immediate danger. Chasing the black king from its safety forces concessions, but a tactical oversight looms with the exposed queen. Developing the bishop to d6 bolsters the queenside pawn structure while preparing to challenge white's central dominance. Seizing the f7 pawn opens a vital diagonal, directly threatening a king now exposed on the queenside and creating immediate tactical headaches for black's coordination. Sacrificing the rook clears a vital diagonal, aiming to expose the white king by eliminating potential defenders. Sacrificing the queen for a premature attack, this move opens up your king to severe counterplay. Unleashing a desperate pawn avalanche, black hopes to disrupt white's centralized king and create chaos, though it weakens his own king's defenses significantly. Disrupting black's central pawn structure with this knight hop aims to exploit the weak d-pawn and open lines towards the vulnerable black king. Securing the queen and preparing a swift counterattack along the 7th rank. This audacious queen sortie immediately probes black's cramped defenses, seeking weaknesses around the exposed monarch. Shifting the queen to f7 activates a forgotten defender and prepares to contest the open file. Anchoring the knight here exerts significant pressure on black's cramped queenside, hinting at a potential breakthrough. Black liberates the bishop, aiming to disrupt white's centralized queen and control the critical central squares. Exchanges simplify the board, opening lines for your queen and rook. Reclaiming central pawns solidifies black's pawn structure and prepares for a kingside fight. A timely check disrupting black's slightly misplaced queen and opening a pathway to a potentially exposed monarch. This defensive maneuver sacrifices valuable tempo, leaving the king awkwardly exposed to further aggression. Sacrificing the queen here opens a clear attack on black's exposed king, aiming for a swift mate. Trading queens here simplifies matters, allowing black to consolidate their awkwardly placed pieces and address their king's safety after the recent pawn storm. Clearing lines with the rook now aims to activate it for the ensuing endgame battle across the board. Reclaiming central influence with the bishop, black prepares for a more active game by developing a piece. Initiating development of the rook to an open file, preparing for potential pawn advances or piece insertions. Bringing the king into play, a bold activation to support potential pawn pushes and find safety amidst the complex piece maneuvering. Unleashing the f-pawn aims to pry open lines for potential kingside assault, though it weakens the pawn's shield. Expanding on the queenside aims to loosen white's grip and potentially create counterplay against the isolated d-pawn. Securing the open file with this pawn advance offers a chance to activate the rook and disrupt black's pawn structure. Regaining the pawn stabilizes black's structure and prepares to contest the now open g-file for potential counterplay. Securing the kingside pawn chain solidifies white's structure and prepares a pawn advance. Opening lines of communication for your rook, aiming to disrupt white's pawn structure and activate your queen. Re-establishing central influence, this knight repositions to eye potential weaknesses in black's pawn structure. Trading the rook now simplifies the position, forcing the queens off and leading towards a potentially drawish endgame given the balanced pawn structure. Initiating king activity becomes paramount now, seeking a safe haven and potentially joining the fight. Seizing the open file offers immediate threats, forcing white's king further into danger. Unleashing the king from its defensive shell seeks active participation, but exposes it to potential harassment. Activating the bishop to a more aggressive diagonal offers counterplay. Pushing the g-pawn again risks further weakening your king's shield, a dangerous gamble now. Preparing to contest the open files for the endgame, a sensible regrouping. Asserting pressure on the f-file, the rook now dominates the open space and prepares to harass the black king.